morning. The objective of this research is to investigate changes in people's lifestyle in quarantine phase, focusing on the consequences on an emotional and relational level. In fact, due to spread of COVID-19, many countries had to adopt restrictive measures to ensure public health, calling for self-isolation to citizens. But the state of isolation is believed to affect social relationships. So, a survey was created to investigate the impact that this period of isolation has on relationships. In fact, in this phase, most social interaction are video mediated, for example through Skype, WhatsApp or Zoom, and a physical face-to-face interaction at the present is not possible. The research will allow us to identify the way that this period of isolation has on the style of behavior and on the socialization needs. The results will therefore be useful and important for predicting possible lifestyle changes and relationship changes caused by this long period of quarantine. Also, the research will be useful to understand what are the benefits but also the limitations of a video-mediated interaction in affected relationships. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, I am Carolina Mariei. Let me introduce you my thesis project, which is about the study of the relationship between mindfulness, emotional regulation, and gambling disorder. The objective of this thesis is to study this relationship through a series of correlational analyses, as the literature has highlighted how emotional regulation plays a very important role in behavioral addictions, such as gambling disorder. Furthermore, the literature has shown that mindfulness is associated with less severe gambling outcomes. The 20 study participants were recruited from a gambling community, and they have completed 3 self-report questionnaires: the Canadian Problem Gambling, the Cognitive and Affective and Mindfulness Scale Revise, and the Difficulties in Emotional Regulation Strategies. Based on previous studies, it is expected to find that a lower mindfulness capacity corresponds to a greater problematic nature linked to pathological gambling, and that difficulties in emotional regulation are positively related to the disorder. It is hoped that the results of this research will be useful for implementing the treatments for this disorder, the relationship of which with mindfulness has so far been poorly studied. Furthermore, being aware of the ER difficulties could help the patient avoid relapses, given that the ability to tolerate distress is associated with increased length of abstinence from gambling. Thank you.
My experimental research aims to investigate an integrated approach to increase the cognitive flexibility in anorexia and bulimia nervosa, a neuropsychological treatment, cognitive remediation therapy, combined with a neurological one, Transcranian Data current simulation. Literature states their efficacy in single forms, while their integration is tested for the first time in this pilot study. So the research question is there an additive effect of combined treatment compared to single forms? This sample is composed of 10 female inpatients, randomly assigned to experimental and control groups, receiving a TDCS and placebo stimulation. The study design is longitudinal, baseline, combined treatment, post-treatment, and follow-up. Qualitative and quantitative data are collected from neuropsychological and clinical evaluation. Due to coronavirus pandemic, this pilot study luckily has stopped at collecting data, so the research group only supposed the following expected results. Development of cognitive flexibility, reduction of anxious and depressive symptoms, improvement in quality of life. This research is clinically relevant because integrated protocols could improve eating disorder prognosis. This processualistic approach should lead to a reduction of symptomatology, operating on psychological processing instead of thought content. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, my name is Luca Viandrate, and in this research we would like to investigate what are the negative and positive psychological aspects of the network, considering its exponential development year after year. Telework, telemedicine, e-learning, and the Internet of Things are the main areas we will talk about, and the same words are used for carrying out a bibliographical research through different databases from a reflective point of view. The partial results are shown in the poster. Therefore, telework shows psychological advantages and disadvantages that are enclosed in a table on the poster, while telemedicine has shown itself to be more an integrative methodology than the professions to which it refers. In the end, we can expect from the others results that may be in line with those we found before, hoping that future generations can make good use of them. Thank you.
Prompt and proper diagnosis is the first step in setting up an effective treatment. The diagnosis of dementia with Lewy bodies is still challenging because the overlap of symptoms with other dementia syndromes and because it often involves the use of invasive and expensive methods. The current study aimed at testing the diagnostic value of quantitative electroencephalography combined with a software based on machine learning in order to ascertaining or excluding the diagnosis of dementia and differentiating dementia with Lewy bodies from other dementia syndromes. 25 patients with cognitive and progressive disorder underwent multiple diagnostic evaluations in which quantitative electroencephalography is part of a set of methods considered more indicative of the pathology. Then, we're going to compare the diagnosis between them, and we expect that the ones emerged from quantitative electroencephalography match the ones arising from the other diagnostic evaluations. If the expected results were confirmed, it would be possible to conclude that quantitative electroencephalography could be a non-invasive, inexpensive, and easy-to-use diagnostic support tool. Future research will point towards the improvement of these diagnostic methods in order to provide further separation between dementia with Lewy bodies and Alzheimer's disease.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks to my internship during this last year with Pepita Onlus, an Italian cooperative which works with adolescents and awareness about bullying and cyberbullying, I've decided to focus my studies on prosocial behavior and its impact on bullying. Promotion of prosocial behavior could be useful to improve and to learn students' relational and emotional capabilities, such as empathy and compassion, in order to support victims of bullying and every type of aggression. The aim of my study is to highlight and demonstrate the relationship between prosocial behavior and bullying, keeping into consideration the bullying dynamics. I've decided to gather 100 Italian students attending middle school, so in a range from 11 to 13 years old. Participants should fill in 3 online anonymous questionnaires through which I could identify prosocial behavior and bullying manifestation in the classrooms. Once all data are collected, I will carry out some important statistical analysis through SPSS program. What I expect is the effective correlation between prosocial behavior and bullying and the possibility to reduce bullying.
Hi everyone, I am Claudia Chiari. I will briefly explain my research. Following traumatic events, there is a high possibility of developing a post-traumatic stress disorder that often occurs in comorbidity with other psychopathologies and is frequently associated with a lack of support and dropout of therapy. In this research, I investigate the symptom of PTSD, comorbidity with other disorders, the factors that predict low tractability indices, and the personality factors that influence social support and consequently the evolution of PTSD. A cross-sectional pilot study will be carried out on about 30 patients over the age of 18, exposed to one or more traumatic events during their lifetime, who will be given the trauma symptom inventory and the personality assessment inventory. As a expected result, we could find that these patients develop some PTSD symptoms, often related with other disorders. Low tractability indices are related to depressive disorder and low social support, which in turn is related to low relational warmth index. All these factors will predict the severity of PTSD symptoms. This study will be the first one in Italy that used the trauma symptom inventory to investigate PTSD, and one of the few recent studies that investigates social support and relational warmth as variables that influence the development and the treatment of PTSD. This information directs therapy to treat these patients.
Hi everyone, I'm Lia Cirillo. Nowadays, it's a topic of debate in scientific community that bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder show several overlapping symptoms and that it's difficult to make a differential diagnosis. The first research aim is to identify differences and overlaps between the two clinical conditions through a systematic review following the PRISMA guidelines. Preliminary results confirm differences in affective stability and also show that few studies have investigated the differences in the pathological dimension of impulsivity and aggressiveness. For this reason, the second aim is to measure impulsivity and aggressiveness in a clinical sample with the Brown-Goodwin lifetime history of aggression and the Barrett impulsiveness scale. I expect qualitative differences between the two disorders and also high levels of impulsivity and aggressiveness in subjects with both disorders in comorbidity. The potential of this study is the definition of more clinical variables useful to better discriminate between these two disorders and the explanation of the differences regarding impulsivity and aggressiveness. This could provide a useful tool for clinicians in order to orient themselves toward the correct diagnosis, which is essential to improve therapeutic accuracy.
This project aims to investigate the relationship between depression and implicit beliefs. According to Zelo's theoretical model, depression is the outcome of explicit or implicit verbal processes that occur during normal episodes of mood fluctuation. This is a preliminary study that aims to investigate the impact of implicit depressive beliefs on individuals' mood and their relationship with explicit depressive beliefs. Scientific literature has confirmed a statistically significant relationship between depression and explicit measures, but little is known about the predictive value of implicit measures. A sample of 151 university students was recruited. They were administered a battery of questionnaires and then participated to an experimental computer task called Implicit Relational Assessment Procedure, designed to measure implicit depressive beliefs. Some of them were then selected to participate to a final mood induction procedure where their skin conductance was measured in response to stimuli inducing a sad mood. We expect a predictive relationship between IRAP scores and a faster skin conductance response plus a slower return to baseline, and 2, an absence of a statistically significant relationship between IRAP scores and questionnaire total scores. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, research has stopped at IRAP administration. If those results will be confirmed, Zero's model will be experimentally verified and later applied to a clinical population.
My name is Laurea and this is my thesis project. A better understanding of the psychiatric comorbidity treatment in adolescent anorexia is essential, as it seems to be associated with more negative outcomes and higher mortality rates. This qualitative study aims at describing the differences between family-based treatment and enhanced cognitive behavior therapy, and aims at testing the existence of evidence of effectiveness of the two protocols in managing comorbidities. A comparison between the two protocols shows that FBT treats comorbidities, considering them as distinct clinical entities, whereas CBT does not, considering them as a direct consequences of hypoalimentation that will disappear with the remission of the eating disorder. A narrative review, which has been done using PubMed, PsycInfo, and some inclusion criteria, shows that the two treatments improve some comorbidities, but there is a whole absence of high-quality evidence of effectiveness. Therefore, this study highlights the need to fill in the literature gaps through controlled randomized trials, as managing comorbidities inaccurately could lead to potentially harmful treatment for patients. Thank you for your attention.
Hi everybody! With this video I want to present my poster content. The title is The Phenomenon of Sexting, the Overexposure of the Self. Digital revolution has transformed the traditional means of communication, creating new phenomena such as sexting. Sexting refers to the practice of sending and receiving sexually explicit material from and to another person's phone. Regarding method, a Prisma study was used to identify the necessary items. In particular, this study focusing on psychological characteristics and motivations for sexting, related to the relationship between sexting behavior, emotional regulation, and risky sexual behavior. Concerning results, it's possible to expect that people with high scores in difficult emotional regulation and in risky sexual behavior are more involved into sexting behavior. Concerning sexting motivations, instead, we expect that only instrumental motivations could involve in dangerous behavior. In conclusion, this study contributes to better understand this topic and to provide suggestions for future research and preventative actions. Thank you for your attention.
Hi everyone, I'm Gianluca. Anger rumination plays an important role in maintaining and amplifying feelings of anger and negative affectivity in depressed people, but it's still unclear the role that it plays in anxiety disorders. Research aim is to explore the relationship between anger rumination and the presence of depressive and anxiety disorders. Test battery, which include anger rumination scale, back depression inventory, back anxiety inventory, was administered to a clinical sample of 32 subjects with anxiety and depressive disorders and to a control sample composed of healthy subjects that is still being recruited. Preliminary results show a significant difference in anger rumination levels only between subjects with comorbidity of anxiety and depressive disorders and subjects with anxiety disorders. We expect to have similar results also between the clinical and the control samples. And, as the recent scientific literature shows, to find a strong relationship between anger rumination levels and depression levels. As for anger rumination and anxiety levels, it would be very interesting to discover their relationship, because this scientific evidence could be a starting point for further research and be noteworthy in clinical practice.
Good morning, everyone. In response to the European Directive of 3rd January 2018, Marketing Financial Directive questionnaires were developed to help the financial advisor to present the most appropriate investment for his clients. However, current MiFID questionnaires don't take account of psychological variables that influence financial decision making. So the aim of this study is to develop a tool that responding to MiFID directive and considering behavioral finance studies integrates current existing questionnaire, especially in psychological factors evaluation. Following an analysis of existing questionnaires and focus group with financial advisors, we selected an item sample focused on investment goals, trusting consultant, coping strategies, and personality traits, and then we test questionnaire reliability. A pilot study is currently underway on a sample of 30 investors, followed by Banca Patrimoni consultants. So we expect that personality traits might influence the type of investments made by clients, and we also expect that high level of trust in consultant should influence investors' risk tolerance. So it is proposed that our tool could be a valid support to consultant for investors' profiling. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Language and emotion are closely related since the language is enabled to shape the way human beings perceive themselves and the world. The question behind this project is, with which word can people between 20 and 30 years old express its emotions? To answer this question, we build a survey to get the results, with a list of emotions, taking Ekman's emotions as a reference, where the subject will be asked to select the emotion that they feel most frequently and to provide a personal description, including emoticons. We expect to find both a frequency of emotion and a list of words and topics representative of the emotion experienced in order to create an emotional generational vocabulary, and also we want to evaluate if the words used to describe emotion are different from those that define primary emotions. This project is important because obtaining the knowledge of an emotional generational vocabulary could help to better understand what the patient is really communicating to the therapist and so better fulfill its inner needs. Thank you for your attention.
In mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, practitioners focus on the present moment. They can have different personality traits, and during practice they can experience different thoughts related to the present, a phenomenon called mind wandering. Also, each participant will be able to develop various aspects of awareness through MBSR. So the aim of the study is the identification of the correlation existing between traits, mind wandering, and most developed aspect of awareness by administering tests to 20 practitioners of the Mindfulness and Psychotherapy Center of Milan. The purpose of the study is to create some profiles with which to develop MBSR programs based on these three elements usable in psychotherapy. Preliminary results show two profiles who describe mind-wandering concerning worries about organization of daily activities, show a self-directed character, and implement conscious actions with the program. Who describe mind-wandering concerning negative memories, show a persistent character, and adopt a non-judgmental inner experience with the program. So the hypothesis that there is a correlation existing between these three variables has been confirmed. Also, two practitioners' profiles were identified to be implemented in MBSR. Thanks for the attention.
Hello! Depression remains a relevant topic, especially these difficult times of global pandemia. And traditional antidepressant drug treatment for depression gives results only after several weeks. And research shows that there are certain psychosocial therapies as chronotherapy, which might give quicker results. And chronotherapy is a method by which external stimuli are manipulated to influence persons' internal rhythms. And those techniques can be light therapy or sleep deprivation. And I'm going to conduct a systematic review following PRISMA protocol, in which I'm going to investigate which are the best parameters of light therapy and sleep deprivation for the most feasible results of treatment of depression. Thank you.
Good morning. The title of my thesis project is Desire Thinking and Permissive Beliefs in Light Smokers. Desire thinking is a repetitive style of thinking referred to a desire object. Its continued use can produce an amplification of permissive beliefs, which are justifications the people use to carry out their desired action. This may be harmful for the individual when the desired object is noxious, So, the principal aim of my project is to investigate the possible impact of the desired thinking on the intensity of permissive beliefs about smoking in lead smokers over time. If desired thinking has a significant impact on these beliefs, focused therapeutic intervention on it could be useful to help people get out of smoking habits. For the research, 33 Italian university students were recruited. None of them have to smoke electronic cigarettes. They were randomly divided into 3 groups. Each group had to do a different task to induce the desired thinking, while the permissive beliefs intensity was measured with the permissive beliefs questionnaire in 3 distinct times. Results show that desired thinking has not generated a significant change in the permissive beliefs intensity. One reason should be due that subjects did not have a full-blown nicotine addiction. In the future, could be interesting apply this study to heavy smokers to compare the results.
Hello, my name is Beatrice Parenti and my research project will replicate a study conducted by Riccati et al. In 2017, which used the network approach to analyze the borderline personality disorder trait between clinical and control sample. I will replicate the study for 3 main reasons. Firstly, in recent years there is a growth of interest for network analysis applied to psychopathology. Second, the Riccati study showed that few symptoms are actually distinctive of the borderline personality disorder. And finally, the psychological community is experiencing a period of credibility crisis and my research is in line to the scientific community need. I will recruit 100 control subjects and they will complete the borderline personality disorder checklist. After, the network analysis will be used to study the borderline personality disorder trait. Since no clinical sample is available, the result will be compared with the clinical sample from the original study. At the moment, there are not preliminary results, but if they confirm those of Riccati study, they will highlight the robustness data found and they demonstrate the replicability of network approach.
This is a prospective controlled multi-center study enrolling patients over 65 years old, aiming to assess the best suited valvular procedure between surgical and transcatheter through the evaluation of health-related quality of life. This is important since the elderly population is constantly growing, and this growth will increase the numbers of valvulopathy as well as valvular procedures, and furthermore, the health expenditure. 250 patients have been enlisted and divided into 2 groups, one for transcatheter operated patients and the other for surgical. SF12 and the visual analog scale have been used to assess quality of life, and data have been collected during hospitalization and in a 12-month follow-up. Given the less invasive nature of transcatheter procedures, we expect significant improvements in the transcatheter group. However, preliminary data do not support our hypothesis, since we found a significant improvement in physical component score from the SF12 in the surgical group. If we were to see that surgical procedures have a better quality of life outcome,
Hello, I'm Angela Rossi and my thesis is titled Residual Cognitive Symptoms Following a Depressive Episode. In about 13% of the patients treated for cold cognitive anomalies, the recovery is only partial, as these individuals do not meet all the criteria for the diagnosis of depression after treatment but still show some cognitive symptoms. This might increase the possibility of a relapse and therefore the return of the identified disorder, causing functional impairments and a reduction in the quality of life. The objective is to identify and evaluate the presence of a residual cognitive symptomatology in patients with at least one previous depressive instance, major depression and bipolar disorder. The tests administered are Beck Depression Inventory, Montreal Cognitive Assessment, the Short-Form Health Survey, FAST, World Health Organization Quality of Life, Ruminative Response Scale, and ThinkIt. The results indicate the presence of major cognitive impairments in executional and attentional function and in the memory. The residual cognitive symptomatology causes a low perception of the quality of life and impairments in functions of the individual. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alessia Zaini and my research project is about our perfectionist physiological response to errors. I decided to conduct this study as for now, the scientific literature provides little evidence regarding the existence of a personality-based difference in how people physiologically respond to a certain situation. This knowledge could, for instance, change the methodology used by clinicians to make a diagnosis. For this study, 5 healthy volunteers were recruited from the clinical centers at the Solus. The subjects had to undergo a cognitive experiment. Specifically, they had to signal the errors they made while performing a brightness discrimination task. They had 6 seconds to signal their errors, and this period of time was believed to insinuate uncertainty in the subject. Participants' heart rate and skin conductance response was detected throughout the whole duration of the computer test. We hypothesized that due to the high tendency to worry and ruminate about actual possible errors, higher level of perfectionism will predict a higher activation of the sympathetic nervous system. This is an ongoing experiment, therefore we do not have any preliminary results yet. Nevertheless, if our expectation will be confirmed, the study could provide a more reliable and objective method to measure perfectionism. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, I'm Alice and now I'll talk about my research project. Emergency workers are exposed to potential traumatic events that can represent the origin for psychological disorders with profound repercussions on their quality of life and their working capacity. The main research question is to evaluate the effectiveness of individual EMDR intervention in order to improve emergency workers' quality of life. Participants are emergency workers who request to participate. The control group compiles the test battery twice, 3 weeks apart, without any psychological support, while the experimental group meets 3 EMDR meetings. Before starting the therapeutic intervention and at the end of this, it compiles the test battery, while at the end of the first and the second section, it compiles only 2 questionnaires of the test battery. Due to the COVID-19, the original protocol was suspended and a single case was developed. Preliminary results show a decrease in cognitive fusion, functional impairment, and burnout symptoms. Finally, this research is significant to underline the importance of a therapeutic support for emergency workers in order to improve their quality of life and their working capacity and consequently the safety of society. Thank you.
Good morning. Prolonged unhealthy eating habits can increase the risk to develop several health issues. Thanks to a healthy diet, it is possible to reduce the onset or worsening of chronic disease. Behavioral economics has shown that it is possible to nudge people into healthier behavior, reducing those that are harmful. The goal of these studies is to examine hospital cafeteria as a working context, place in which people make food choices daily. The aim of the intervention has been to increase the choice of 3 main healthy target food categories using nudging and adequate economic incentives. The intervention took place in the Ospedale di Guarda Cadranda in Milan. The sample was mainly composed by the employees of the hospital and the ABC design was used for the study. Each phase lasted 5 days, in which people's choices were video recorded by a GoPro and the data were taken by a pairs of observers. Although data processing is still in progress, it is expected an increase in the choice of the target food categories during nudging intervention. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Valentina. Let me introduce you my research project titled Self-Reported Compliance with Containment Measures in the Italian Population During COVID-19 Outbreak. As the title suggests, the pandemic declaration has led many states to impose a quarantine regime whose compliance is essential in order to contain the infection. Previous researches have shown that there are 3 factors that can affect quarantine compliance, such as degree of delayed discounting, perceived risk of contagion, and psychological variables. Therefore, given the important role of Italy as a precursor in what other countries could soon face, it appears crucial to understand how all these factors can affect the degree of compliance with the current restrictions. According to the aim, an online cross-sectional survey was launched and preliminary results show that the likelihood to comply with the current restriction decreased as the hypothetical period of isolation increased, suggesting that the intention to comply of Italian citizens could depend on lockdown duration and people's exhortation. Although the effect of some variable has yet to be assessed, our finding could provide interesting insight for public authorities regarding the possible behavior of Italians, and therefore appropriate communication campaign could be planned. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, everyone. Nowadays, there is a high rate of neurocognitive disorder. For neurodegenerative syndromes, only treatment focus on symptoms are available. Drug treatment is commonly used, even if it could lead to substantial side effects. Pet therapy would seem to be an alternative solution instead of drugs. I have realized a systematic review using the Prisma method to find the article on this argument, which focus on mood of tone, cognitive ability, passion and caregiver quality of life. The aim of this systematic review is to get data on efficacies of pet therapy in this area to provide a greater empirical basis for future application. Current literature show conflicting data on the efficacy of this intervention, mainly due to the research design. Furthermore, the object of this systematic review is overcome limits of current literature in order to explore a new perspective.
Good morning, I'm Giorgia Tanzini and I will shortly explain my study. Some cognitive elements like core belief, worry, contribute to generate and maintain romantic jealousy. Despite this, the scientific literature regarding the influence of those elements on jealousy is little. The aim of the study is to deepen the association between jealousy, metacognition and worry in order to add heuristic value for further research and develop an emotional and cognitive model of desire. 316 subjects, of which 77 are male, were recruited from email contact and directed to Google Form platform. They were explained the purpose of the study and asked to complete an anamnestic questionnaire and 4 standardized tests that investigate beliefs, anxiety and depression, worry and jealousy. The expected result is to find a significant association between jealousy, metacognition and worry. In conclusion, this result could allow to develop an emotional and cognitive model of desire. This can contribute to broaden the scientific literature regarding jealousy from a metacognitive perspective. Thank you for the attention.
I'm Dalila Torres and my research project deals with the psychological and neuropsychological profile of a prison subject on a Brazilian population. Nowadays, there are not a clinical treatment able to reduce a criminal recidivism because the current diagnosis system is categorical, so neglecting fundamental elements. The aim of the study is to provide a functioning profile referred to specific type of crime using a dimensional model of research domain criteria. The sample was divided into 4 crime clusters: homicide, rape, theft, and sexual assault. The study design is transversal and the 4 dimensions were evaluated: emotionality, neurocognitive functioning, deviant behavior, and potential recurrences. Due to coronavirus pandemic, we can only expose expected results. To identify different psychological profile and the future recidivism, to find different functioning profiling, and to discriminate different operating levels. This study is relevant for the scientific community because it underlined the need of dimensional procedure in criminology. This contribution itself is not enough, but it could suggest future researches. Thank you for attention.
Nowadays, the association between depression and mother-child interaction is most studied in literature, although perinatal maternal anxiety is more frequent than maternal depression. Therefore, the first aim is to investigate whether some selected risk factor could influence the manifestation of anxiety and depression during pregnancy and 6 months postpartum. The second aim is to study the negative influence of maternal anxiety and depression on the ideal interaction 6 months postnatal. An amnestic structured interview has been administered on 62 new mothers to evaluate the presence of risk factor and then to estimate anxiety, depression and stress level. The Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, the STAI and the Short Parent Form Stress Index have been assessed. Mother-infant interaction have been evaluated by coding interactive behavior. The study expects the manifestation of depression and anxiety during the pregnancy and the 6 months postpartum to be affected by some risk factor. This research expects anxiety to play a central role in the negative influence on the dyadic relationship at the 6 months postnatal. Therefore, this study will shift the attention of scientific community to the greater negative influence of anxiety compared to depressive symptoms during the perinatal period.
I'm Raffaele Visciano and I'm a clinical psychology student at Sigmund Freud University in Milan. Investigated the sexual preferences and the students' fantasies, desire and sexual behavior of young Italian adults took a questionnaire developed by us and published on different web platforms. We hypothesized that the vision of sexuality was fluid, individualistic, aimed at autoerotism and the search for pleasure, and moved away from the mere procreation of offspring. But what we want to show with this study is the variety of sexual preferences expressed, both conventional and unconventional. We hope that this survey can describe the complete and up-to-date picture of young people's sexuality, so as to increase knowledge and decrease stigma, especially in mental health professionals. Let this be the start of the other similar survey. We look forward to showing you the final result, which are in favor of our hypothesis.
Good morning, my name is Michela Ferrara. According to the Lacan literature, the aim of the present study is evaluating the inter-rater agreement rate between Italian preschoolers, parents and teachers, using the strength and difficulty questionnaire. The purpose is assessing if one or both raters are needed to provide significant information for appropriate diagnosis in preschoolers using SDQ. SDQ identifies behavioral and emotional difficulties in subjects from 3 years old. The sample will be at least composed by 450 Italian preschoolers, parents and teachers, selected from the general population by the convenience sampling criterion. The agreement rate will be calculated on the SDQ total score, externalizing symptom subscale, and internalizing symptom subscale score using the Pearson correlation and interclass correlation coefficient. According to previous studies, a low agreement rate is expected on the SDQ total score, with a higher rate on the externalizing symptom subscale compared to the internalizing one. Expected results remark that parents and teachers usually observe different responses by preschoolers, so that SDQ should be completed by both raters in order to define a correct diagnosis. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning. The emotional response to a stimulus is capable of causing change in the surface temperature of numerous areas of the body. This change can be measured using infrared thermography. The aim of the following research is to study the possible difference in temperature change in the areas of the face in response to two emotional stimuli of the anger recall and jealousy recall type. The procedure involves recording the thermal response emanating from the subject and at the same time the skin conduction also by mindful descent upon presentation of the stimulus by means of an infrared thermographic camera. Some preliminary tests have showed in the protocol anger recall a significant correlation between an increase in the surface temperature of the neck and face and an increase in skin conduction levels. This is important to underline the connection between thought emotion and bodily reaction and how a memory of significant life event has a strong impact not only on emotionally but also on physical level. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning. The topic of my project is about the Italian standardization of a test called Honors LD that measures outcomes for people with intellectual disabilities. Through this test, we need to collect data that can be standardized and that can address a quality of life project for these people. I will evaluate, for example, some correlations, differences between genders, age, etc. Participants are 1,000 Italian people with intellectual disabilities. The Honors LD scale is made up of 18 items that measure 7 macrofactors of the person's lives, and it is compiled by a clinician who must evaluate the level of severity in the last 4 weeks. In the first results, there is a significant correlation between age and 3 macrofactors. With increasing age, problems relating to this 3 macrofactor will seem to decrease. This data would seem to suggest how, in the recent years, people, especially younger people, with increasingly severe levels of impairments, are coming to services. These results are useful both for the individual profile and for services.
Good morning, I am Francesca Alessandrello and I took part in a research project aimed to define waste stigma, which causes psychological and physical diseases on obese women. Previous studies showed that focusing on one's body functionality, that is, what a body is able to do, will decrease internalized weight stigma. We studied for the first time whether focusing on another woman's body functionality could reduce weight stigma toward others. So we tested 98 women randomized in experimental and control groups and completing a rating exercise that permitted them to respectively focus or not on an obese woman's body functionality. And weight stigma attitudes have been assessed before and after the exercise. Regression analysis proved that participants who focus on an obese woman's body functionality showed less weight stigma and more closeness with her. So developing and spreading this knowledge will help to improve obese women's quality of life.
Good morning, I'm Erika Bazzoli and my research project is the Italian validation of a questionnaire assessing anxiety symptoms in preschool age, the Preschool Anxiety Scale Revised. Anxiety disorders in childhood are generally considered understudied, although current literature has underlined early onset, tendency to chronicization and an impact on quality of life. In Italian language, there are still no validated questionnaires focused on anxiety in preschool age. In this study, it has been recruited mothers and teachers of 450 children aged 3-6 years in preschools in northern Italy. They completed a test-retest body of questionnaires consisting in the PASR and other 3 validated questionnaires. Findings are supposed to reflect a 4-factor structure or loading on a higher-order anxiety factor. It will also be analyzed construct validity, the internal consistency, and test-retest reliability. According to previous studies, the PASR appears to be a reliable and valid measure. It might help clinicians in assessing anxiety with preschool children and therefore contribute in developing specific early interventions and prevention programs. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Nowadays, almost 19% of infants with an order CV with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder fulfill the same diagnostic criteria by the age of 3. For this reason, the identification of early markers for autism in this target population is a considerable challenge for planning effective interventions. There is evidence supporting that atypical sensory processing arises early in the progression of autistic symptoms, predicting the severity of social impairments, and that environmental risk factors impact more than previously estimated on its pathogenesis. But a mediation study still lacks. So we carried out a prospective study to find which is the pattern the sensory profile that better discriminates between 18 months at risk from low-risk infants administering the tolerant sensory profile 2, and to examine the mediational effect of sensory profile between environmental risk factors and the diagnosis made at 24 months with the others too. And firstly, we find out that high-risk infants show a condition of hyperresponsiveness to visual stimuli and a low frequency of sensory-seeking behaviors, which might preclude them from establishing effective social interactions, which may start with eye contact and approach. And secondly, birth weight predicts the diagnosis of autism in high-risk infants, and this relationship is only mediated by the pattern of sensory seeking. So these reliable markers will guide the detection of the most vulnerable infants that will benefit from early intervention, and will also provide novel direction for future clinical screenings.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chiara, and I have studied the link between the general psychopathology factor, able to capture the shared variance across different psychiatric symptoms, and DNA methylation to understand if DNA methylation patterns are shared or specific to different clinical conditions. It's a population-based study using DNA methylation and child psychiatric symptom data, this last assessed with the child behavior checklist in 440 children at age 10. As method, we have used WGCNA, that is a systematic biology network analysis able to identify modules of highly comethylated DNA methylation sites across the genome. Results have shown a significant association between the general psychopathology factor and DNA methylation patterns, only one module, containing 80 different genes. These findings are relevant because they provide, for the first time in literature, empirical evidence that DNA methylation patterns are shared and not specific to different psychiatric symptoms. Moreover, they increase the knowledge characterizing the architecture biology in the relationship between epigenetic science and mental health.